There's a Bible verse that stuck with me when it says, if you faint in the day of adversity, then your strength is small. And I flipped it and I said, well, then if you don't faint, if you keep moving forward, then your strength is enlarged. When the going gets tough, what do you do? If you push through that, you become stronger for it.
Welcome to another episode of High Stakes with Steve Rozenberg. Super excited today because, as I always say, the reason I even have this show really is for selfish reasons, and I'm just going to say it. I like to meet interesting people. If I don't go somewhere to meet them, I figured we can meet them right here and we can meet them together. One of the things I realized over the years, I've traveled the world. I've been to every continent except Antarctica. I've been to almost probably every major city on the planet as an airline pilot. And what I always think is so interesting is I may be in Munich, Germany, or Sydney, Australia, having a cup of coffee, watching the world go by. And I realize every person that's walking by me has a story. They have a life, they have a history, they have something about them that if you don't ask them, you would never know. Could be the most interesting person in the world. They may just walk by and you don't know them. So I always try to make a point to just kind of observe the world, watch the world turning around me, if you will, when I'm in these different countries or, going somewhere. And I always just find it interesting that everybody has a story. Anybody you meet, they've got a history. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good, but it's still a story and it's still theirs. So today I have a gentleman on, Bill Blankschaen.
There you go.
I get it?
Yeah, you got it.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
I'm just going to call you Bill because it's easier. So Bill, thanks for being on today with me, man. I appreciate it, buddy.
Oh, Steve, it's great to be here with you. Now I'm thinking, how can I get you to Antarctica? Man, that's the one you haven't been to.
That is the one I have not been to. If I land a plane, a 777 in Antarctica, I will probably, number one, make the news. And number two, you probably may not see me for a little while because I will probably be in trouble by some authorities. So exactly. Maybe it's vacation or, sometimes they go from Buenos Aires. I know they do cruises down to Antarctica. I go to Buenos Aires quite a bit, and I know a lot of cruise ships go there. So that could be an option as well.
Right. Well, I'm just so impressed by your travel journeys, but you're so right. I mean, stories, everybody has one, and yet we kind of take it for granted. So thrilled to be here. Happy to talk about that and wherever else you want to go.
Yeah. So Bill, I guess first, let's just tell the audience, who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of learn a little bit more about you itself.
Yeah. Well, at the high level, I'm a writer. I've written a few books, New York Times bestsellers, USA Today bestsellers, collaborative writing projects with well-known names, and a lot of people you maybe haven't heard of yet who are building their brands, building their businesses, and so forth. And I've started a company called StoryBuilders, and that's what we do. We tell stories, we build stories that make the world a better place. And so it's all about having that greater impact in the world, making the world better through the stories that we're telling, whether it be helping people get clear on their brand stories or telling captivating books and creating all things books related. And then what do you do with those ideas in terms of selling them and monetizing them, courses, trainings, workshops, programs, all these kind of fun things that can be built around it. But it really comes down to valuing your own story and how do you put that out there in the world and what can you do with it?
Now, let me ask you, I guess first question, how did you get into this world? This is an interesting world that not many people dive into.
Yeah. Well, let me go back a little bit to tell you how we got here. When I was a kid, I'm not going to tell my whole life story, but when I was a kid, I was the one that was like reading the cereal boxes as I was eating, like turning the box around and around and around, reading. I loved reading. I loved stories. I loved any kind of thing like that. And I love storytelling. But when I got older, I helped start a private school, and I was leading that for a dozen years. And I'd always thought of myself as a writer, but I wasn't actually writing. I always thought of myself as a storyteller, but I wasn't telling stories. I was doing good work. I was helping kids. I was getting hugs from kindergartners every day and helping teenagers find their path in life. But deep down, it was like there was something, I don't know, a calling burning within me to write and to tell stories. And so finally I reached the place where I was like, I don't want to regret this someday and look back and saying, I wish I had. And so I stepped out from the school and stepped out in this direction. And we went a year, we had kids, went a year with no income as I dove into that, but I never worked harder in my life. I mean, I've talked to everybody in the publishing industry, the storytelling industry, learned all I could, put book proposals together, shop book proposals, really became a student of the art and science of storytelling. And from that, then through that journey became StoryBuilders, but it wasn't an easy road, right? I mean, there was, I remember one day in particular, I was sitting in the backyard with a pen and a paper and just trying to work on a book idea. And outside, I was in Ohio at the time. Outside, it was a beautiful spring day, and the sun was shining, the birds were chirping, the winds kind of wafting over me and so forth. But inside, I had every fear you can imagine. Like, is this going to work? Are we going to end up living with the kids under a box, under a bridge somewhere? I mean, what is that going to look like? I don't know if we're going to make it. But I kept writing. And through that, actually, the book I was working on that day ended up getting picked up by a publisher, published the book. And I realized, I'm really good at this. And then other people started asking me, hey, can you help me with my book? Can you help me with my book? And one thing led to another. Before I knew it, I was like, hey, let's put a team together, people who share our values, who want to do this to help bring other people's ideas to life. Because here's what I learned, Steve, is that breakthrough begins when you start with your story, when you figure out who you are and who you're wired to do and authentically lean into that and be willing to share that with the world. That's when breakthrough begins. And that's how breakthrough began for StoryBuilders and how we've helped so many others in that process.
Let me ask you, you know, I believe we're all on a journey in life, right? I think our lives, I always say this, which is interesting that we're talking, is I always tell people life is like a book, and books are made of chapters.
Oh, totally. Yep.
Chapters begin and chapters end, and some are good, some are bad, some are short, some are long. Sure. I think sometimes people carry on a chapter when they should end it, but for whatever reason. Where is the part of your journey that nobody claps for, no one knows about, but it changed everything for you?
Boy, there's several. I would go back to a time on this journey. It was a couple years in, actually. A couple years into StoryBuilders, we had partnered with somebody and thought we had an understanding of how things were going to function and put a lot of time into a project and a lot of investment into it. And then through no fault of our own, really, it didn't turn out the way that the person we were working with thought it would. And so because of that, the arrangement we had kind of fell apart. And we were left in a place of, it felt like we had done a face plant. Felt like we had done our best, and we just still ended up tripping and falling and slamming into the ground. And I remember that one day sitting outside of Barnes and Noble. I'd probably gone there to work and get a coffee or something like that. Sitting out there again, having that flashback to, I don't know if this is going to work. I thought we were on a roll. I thought that, why did this happen? Why? And it kept coming back though to the decision to, I'm just going to keep moving. I'm going to keep walking. I'm going to keep moving forward. Whatever comes our way, we're not going to quit. And that I think has been a common theme throughout my entire journey. I don't know where it came from necessarily, but it's this idea, the superpower of simply persisting, never quitting. Like, no matter what happens, no matter what disappointments, all right, you might cry about it for a day, and then you get back up and you keep moving forward. And it's always amazed me how few people are willing to do that.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, on the other hand, what happens when you do that? It's almost like the universe is wired to reward you. If you're willing to keep moving forward and not quit, opportunities open up that you never thought would have been possible for you at that time. But if you stop and quit, then you never even see them.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to stay here for a second. Yeah. So that low point in your life or in your business, we'll call it a low point, when you were really maybe doubting, should I do this? Should I quit? Should I go back and get a regular 9 to 5?
Sure.
What did that version of you believe?
I believe that I had begun to tap into my greater purpose. like what I was wired to do and the greatest value that I could deliver to the world. And so the thought of going back to something that was good but not great, I viewed that as that would be such a disappointment to myself, but also not delivering my best to the world. I want, like Walt Whitman said, we want to contribute a verse to humanity's song. And I felt like I would be settling for something less than that. And at the time, our kids, we have 6 kids. And at the time they were, pre-teens, early teens, that kind of range. And I thought, and we've been very open with them about the entrepreneurial journey, and they knew all this. And in fact, that particular project, we'd had a very candid discussion with them about, let's be all in on this family. Are we going in on this? Are we working on this? And they all said, yeah, Dad, let's do it. And so one of my concerns was I didn't want my kids to see that and say, oh, okay, that's how you deal with adversity. You quit, you turn back if things get tough, right? When the going gets tough, the tough stop, right? that I didn't want that message to come through. And in fact, there's a Bible verse that stuck with me, a proverb, I think it is. I'm not sure, when it says, if you faint in the day of adversity, then your strength is small. And I kind of took that and I flipped it and I said, well, then if you don't faint, if you keep moving forward, then your strength is enlarged. You get stronger through that, right? And I think that's a universal principle there of when the going gets tough, what do you do? If you push through that, you become stronger for it. If not, you not only do you stay stuck, but eventually you're going to come up against that same resistance in some other path until you learn what it is that you're meant to learn through that.
Let me ask you, for you to go through that, a lot of times people have the assumption that if you want to be successful, maybe more successful than you are at that moment, a lot of people have this perception that you have to do more. You've got to become
Mm.
this. I always wonder, did you ever have to let go of a belief or let go of something to actually level up, which is opposite of what we think? But I'm just curious, was there anything that you had to shed to step into this new light?
My instinct is telling me yes. I'm trying to think of specifics. I like to give this example to me. What we're talking about here is living or walking or moving with a great deal of faith, and by faith I don't necessarily mean religious faith, although that's a valid faith. I mean, here I define faith as doing what you believe to be true, often in spite of what you see, sense, or feel. Right. And so when I say faith, I mean, actually putting motion to what you say you believe. And I say that because what I've learned is that often you have to approach life with an open hand, if that makes sense. Like you have to, sometimes we hold too tightly to so many different things and we're holding on to it, don't want to lose any of it. But in order to go up, you have to give up, as John Maxwell famously said, right? So what I've come to realize is that you almost have to open your hand and then run forward with an open hand, an open heart, and open mind to what's ahead. It's almost like if picture the idea, if you take a piece of paper and put it up against your hand that's open and just stand there, the paper is just going to fall to the floor. It's not going to be held there. But if you can open your hand, put the paper on, and run forward, the paper will stay there because you're moving forward with that open hand, right? You're able to do something that otherwise wouldn't be possible because you're in motion. And I think that's one of the big things that I've come to realize and struggle with on a daily basis of, I think our natural reaction is to try to hold on to stuff rather than letting it go.
Right.
And that could be, yeah. And now that you say it, there was a time back in 2018, I think, where as a company, we had tried to do a lot of different things. Again, for a good reason. We were trying to help the people we work with. And they said, well, I need some of this and I need this and I need it. And we tried to be a help to them. But we were doing things that we weren't really great at. And it was kind of sucking the life and energy out of us. And so we eventually reached the place where I was like, all right, this is not who we want to be. It's not who we want to go. We're going to go back to who we are. Storytelling is our focus. That's who we are. And so overnight, we walked away from about half of our revenue just immediately, and to a place of we're going to focus on that. And we haven't deviated from that since then. It's been continued to be our focus, and we've grown as a result of that. But it's a good example of, all right, we're going to have to let go of that other stuff, even though it's scary, and focus in. And by focusing in, we've actually been able to impact more.
Do you think, I mean, I believe that being successful is all about, focus, finish, pivot, right? Focus on something, finish it, and then pivot.
Pivot.
It's never the same. It's never a set it
Sure.
and forget it.
Right.
Do you constantly talk to yourself and to the team about having to evolve? Like what's working today will not work in 5 years, statistically speaking, especially with technology and everything.
Sure.
Do you think on those things, or are you just
Yeah.
basically, where are you at on that mentally?
Yeah. Well, we always have had a creative spirit, right? It kind of goes back to our family, right? With our kids, we used to always take them to Disney World a lot. We like to say our youngest son, by the time he turns 18 in December, will have probably spent 1 year of his life on property at Disney World. Right?
Wow.
We invested heavily in that because we wanted them not only family time, but to embrace the creative spirit. And it's been super successful in that sense. They have embraced that. So a big part of our family culture has come into our business, which is let's be creative. In fact, one of our core values is creativity, which means to us, we always ask what if before we ask how to, right? So we always pause, say, hey, what if we did things differently? What if that's what, and we actually have a policy on our team. It's called our wrench throwing policy. And everybody knows it, that, hey, at any time in a call, no matter how much the group think is going in one direction, you can get out a wrench and you can throw it in the works and say, hey, what about this? Or what about this may mess everything up, but I need to throw a wrench. And when they say that, that kind of signals what it is. And we're like, throw it. Let's hear it. Let's put it out there. Right. So yeah, I think it's very important that we have that open and available and rethink things on the one hand. On the other hand, not changing who we are at the culture level, like
Sure.
what those core values and that foundation are, that stays solid, but how that shows up pivots depending on the situation.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're from the way I would interpret it, or like pattern interrupts to kind of shake you to say, hey, I'm not liking where this is going. Maybe someone has tunnel vision.
Sure.
Talk to me about the team, the company, the team, the construction of it, and how you guys, you obviously do these books. How does that operate? Explain that to me.
Yeah. When we started out, it was just me and an assistant. And then we added other writers coming along to help and so forth. And what we really worked hard to do is establish our unique process for doing this that's still highly relational, high touch, and yet a proven system to do that. So we have it structured that on any given project, there's a story guide, right? So that's think project leader. That's the person leading the project. And they often have editorial experience or writing experience as well. So they understand storytelling. And then we have story artisans, who are the writers, the editors, the designers, who come in at the various times to work alongside that. And as we do that, we often develop really close relationships with the people we work with, because we're helping unpack their stories, their ideas, things that are really close to them, things that mean a lot. We're just talking to somebody the other day, and she told me that she said, I was like, the things that we're talking about in this book, I haven't talked about them with anybody but my husband and your team. And like we can get really close. And I've spent a lot of time with people and families in the room, like hearing messages that maybe they haven't talked about before, and unpacking it in that way. Because when people get vulnerable and share those things, that's when I think stories really become powerful. When people can see that there are challenges that you've gone through and you've come out on the other side. So story guides, story artisans, that's really at the heart of that. We have story directors, who are more the creative directors, speaking into that, giving oversight on a lot of those things as well. And then we have different variations, like publishing specialists, who help on that side, and author success leaders, and those kind of things. It's all structured around creating that experience. How do we create that best experience? Because for everybody on our team, if we can't do that, we don't want to be doing any of it, right? So if we can't actually serve someone and help them make the world a better place, then we can find something else to do.
So for you and the team, you have a new book, which I want to hear about.
Sure.
What is the version of success that you guys are chasing right now?
You know, it's a great question. Something we've had active conversations about, because as we've grown, it's so easy to get disconnected from the why that launched you in the first place. And so we've really been actively trying to make sure we're engaged with that, which is our core values, right? It's people. How can we connect with people? How can we serve them? We're a Christian company, so a lot of the team members share that faith. We don't just work with Christians; we work with people all across the spectrum. I like to say you don't have to share the details of my beliefs to enjoy the benefits of them, right? So um, when we just that's very much driven of care and compassion and working with other people in that sense. Um, so staying in touch with that, staying in touch with those, are we actually serving people? How are we best serving them? And that's where we find that fulfillment that really comes into play. So um, that's where our focus is right now is building relationships, connecting with other people, people who have a valuable message that we can really help them tell it well and make the world better because of it. It sounds simple, but we think that's what makes the world work.
So in the, and I'm sure this is probably something that, is top of mind with you and your consumers in the world of AI and technology. And,
Sure.
I obviously doesn't matter what I think about technology or AI, it's still coming,
Sure.
right?
Sure. Sure.
Um, I think that authenticity is going to be much more valuable,
Yeah.
because anybody can plug your info into AI and talk about who you are, or make a great perfect video or perfect slide presentation until they meet you, and then when they
Sure.
actually shake their hand and go, "You are nothing
Right.
like you said you were in the thing." So
Right. Right.
let's talk a
Right.
little bit about that. The if you don't mind, the
Yeah.
perils
Yeah.
of going over the
Sure.
deep end with AI and technology to write your story, write your brand voice.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, we deal with this a lot. First of all, AI, I think, is a valuable tool, and
Yeah,
we are using it ourselves and continuing to explore ways to use it more and more effectively, and to do all those kind of things. But at the same time, we also encounter a lot of people who are seeing AI as like the magic shortcut button. I can just go to AI and poof, I have a book, or boom, it'll tell my story, and I didn't have to do anything. But there's a lot of pitfalls to that, especially if someone's trying to build intellectual property around that and build a distinct message and frameworks and those kind of things. And for instance, if they're using open source AI, there is no such thing as intellectual property because they're pulling in all kinds of other people's things, and then they can't protect it. They can't build anything about it around it. We have, we bring in attorneys at times to talk to our authors about all these kind of things as well. And it's kind of the Wild West out there with AI. So I think there is a lot of value to be had. We work with authors who use it, especially in a closed system, to gather their thoughts. And we work with authors who have invested a lot of money at a high level, bigger names, to develop their AI tools that we've seen, right? Those actually can be used effectively, not perfectly by any means, but effectively to just shorten the workload on a lot of those things. And we've told the team, if rather than you having to personally edit all these different things, AI can do maybe 60% of that, 70,
sure.
right? And knock that off. And then you can do what you love to do, right? And be creative in that sense. So that's where I see it really having the greatest impact in the space that we're in, is making it easier. But like anything, it's like chocolate. Chocolate can be great. We can enjoy it in moderation. But if we're like, that's all I'm eating is chocolate, we're going to end up in a pretty unhealthy place. So
Well, and I think it's I look at AI the same way I would look at any business that utilizes leverage. It's like if I want to go from well, let's just say traveling. If I want to go from Los Angeles to New York, I can walk there. I can ride a bicycle. I
yeah,
can drive a car. I can get on a train. I can, take a boat a long way, or I
right,
can fly in a plane. These are all forms of
right,
leverage. Is it
right.
cheating? No, it's not cheating.
Yeah,
Um, but I think it's not authenticity to say
Yeah.
I got myself there when I flew on a plane. The
Sure.
plane took me there. So you give the plane credit.
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
the challenge is when people are using AI, they're not giving AI the credit,
Sure.
but they're saying that is me. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just how my brain
Yeah. Well, when you can,
processes it.
well, and you would know, I mean, AI has been used on airlines for
Yeah.
flying planes, right? I mean,
Oh yeah.
so, um, but yeah, I think that's the key is if you're using it as a replacement for your original thought and putting your story, no one can replace your story and your experiences. That's the uniqueness. And that's what I think people are really beginning to hunger even more for is that authenticity, that
Yeah.
authentic story, that make it real to me. Because AI can create some story out of nothing, but it can't create the human experience, nor should we want it to, right? So and that's where the real connection. So the people who lean into that more, they're going to be the winners, I believe, in the coming years, and learn to how to leverage AI as a tool in that process.
So talk to me about your new book.
Mhm.
Explain to me what it is and who the target client is and what they get as a result of reading your book.
Sure. Well, I wrote it with the entrepreneur, the business professional, the thought leader in mind, who has a meaningful message that they've been sharing with the world, and they've begun to have some success. They've had a track record. People are resonating with it. They're building a business around it in some way, but they feel like they're just hitting a ceiling because they can't multiply that impact. They can't replicate it beyond themselves, and that's what we want to help them to do is figure out, all right, how do I take that message and then multiply it and then monetize it even further? So I've taken the last 10 years of my journey and everything I've learned about, first of all, how do you tell stories effectively through our storytelling structure, giving people a model and a framework they can use to make any message matter, basically. And then how do you tell your brand story? How do you get clear, individuals or organizations? How do you tell your story to your audience in a way that resonates? And then how do you use all that storytelling structure to build a book? That I call it that message multiplier, right? Because a book can go places you'll never go, and it can touch more people than you'll ever know. And so that multiplier effect becomes so powerful because when you go through the process of creating a book, you create intellectual property. It's not just your story and things that have happened to you. You can create some really unique frameworks and IP that you can then monetize. And we help people do that too at digital courses or trainings, workshops, like we've done all John Maxwell's trainings, workshops, and all that for the last 10 years, building out from his IP, right? And putting that into motion. So that's really what the book is about, is showing people here's how you do that. And here's also some other stuff I've learned along the way that can really help you supercharge that process and take you to the next level by really being a good steward of your story, taking advantage of your story advantage.
So when I think of I'll equate writing a book, and I did write a book, but I probably did not do a very good job of it almost 10 years ago.
Ah,
Um, but when I think of like speaking presentations or webinars or anything that I'm doing, I think of the frameworks and I think
sure.
of the recipe, we'll call it.
Yep.
I equate it to baking a cake. If you want to bake a
Mhm.
cake, there is a recipe, just like building a business,
Sure.
to bake a perfect cake. If you do any of those out of sequence, you're not gonna you have all the right ingredients, but you're not gonna have the cake because you did it in the wrong sequential order. Same thing in speaking. If I was
Sure.
going to sell a product and the first thing I said when I walked on stage is, this is my product, and then I tried to tell you my story, it's probably not going to resonate because certain triggers I didn't do.
Sure.
Does the book explain those kinds of sequence of orders basically to tell the
Yeah.
story in the right framework?
It absolutely does. I mean, that's where the storytelling structure framework comes into play. Because people need to feel that something is familiar to them. I call it the connection continuum. People need to feel like something is familiar to them in order to connect with it, but they're also looking for something fresh, right? So think of this gauge, if you will. On one side, you have fresh and new and different and someone with a insane story or something like that. People actually sometimes find it very hard to connect with that because there's a disconnect that takes place. It's almost like this celebrity up on a pedestal somewhere. I look up to them, but I could never do that. On the other side of that gauge, though, is that familiar feel, and people actually want some relevant element of normal. So if you think about Disney films for so many years, right? All the films that Walt Disney built, Snow White and all these classics and so forth, all of those stories had been done before. Like they weren't totally fresh stories. They were kind of familiar stories that he then put a fresh take on them and
Right.
then found the ultimate connection in the middle. And that's what I think it is when we think about this, is we have to use that structure to find our unique spot in there of normal and new, of fresh and familiar. And when we find that spot, that becomes our unique place. And we know we're no longer diminishing our own value, our own story, because we're sharing it in a powerful, cohesive way. And I think, and that's really what moves them to people to be drawn toward it. And so, yeah, that's exactly what the book walks through, is giving people a structure to actually tell that story, and a pattern to follow, a structure to follow that then frees them to lean into the art of storytelling, right? When you have the structure down, then you can be creative. Just like so many things that we do in the world, they require both that science and art component.
What are the major objections you get? Because writing a book is not fun, per se, unless you like writing books. But what are some of the objections that you get from people? You've got this book, you're saying, hey, here is the recipe
Sure.
to the next level. What do you normally hear back?
Well, first of all, we try to make writing books fun. That's what everybody we work with tells us, that when we're working on books with them, it is in fact a fun thing.
When it comes to people reading a book, or starting to go down this path, they read the book, they're all excited, but they're going to have some objections, right?
Sure.
What are some objections that you get
Sure.
when it comes to somebody wanting to do this, but there's some fear,
Yeah.
or whatever reasons they have, the junk that they tell themselves? What are
Yeah.
some common objections you get?
Yeah. Well, I think some of the most common are, first of all, does my story actually matter? Do I have something worth telling? Or
Hmm.
is it, and I think this is a human reaction, because like I say, we tend to deify others and diminish ourselves. We think someone else has a cool story. I don't really have a cool story, again, because it's normal for me. I've lived it. It doesn't feel different,
Sure.
or my experience or my knowledge. So one is just getting past that and understanding that what you have is valuable to some people, and that there are people out there who want what you have to offer them. They're actively seeking it right now, and they're trying to figure out, how do I get it? And you have that expertise to speak to it. So that's one. Another common objection I get is, I don't want to go through the process of writing a book and not have it be really good, right? And have it be, I'm kind of embarrassed by it. And not only was it painful and it hurt and all that kind of stuff, but I really don't want to tell anybody about it at the end of the day.
Right.
Right. And so that's why we work really hard to only deliver excellent results. And I would say, we work really hard to make it a fun process. The authors that we work with, the feedback we get is always how much they enjoy it and what a fun experience it is, the relationship. We try to take that hard work concept and flip it on its head and make it fun, enjoyable. We have many authors who are coming back with us for their third book now, right? They're doing all these different things because we make it as pain-free as we can. But so a lot of those objections that people have, I would say another objection they have is it worth my investment of time, of money, of resources? Is it worth my investment? I think the answer to that, it has to go with what we call the story strategy question. Right? What is your strategy? What are you trying to build? What are you trying to create? What's the end that you have in mind? And if you don't have that in mind, then you're probably going to be disappointed on it. So we always ask on the front end that question to help determine, where are you going? Does it make sense to do a book that helps you get there? And how will it help you get there? To have that strategy behind it. So you begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey famously said. So then you're not disappointed when you get there. So I think those are some of the key objections we often hear.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I remember when I was learning to speak on stages, and my mentor said, you got to write a book. And I was like, a book? He said, yeah, you got to write a book. He's like, you're not going to be taken seriously unless you have a book. I'm like,
Sure.
I don't, I'm like, a book about what? He's like, your story. I said, I don't have a story. He said, Steve, everyone has a story, write
Mm.
yours.
Right. Right.
And so I started, this is, before, AI or any of these things. And I'm sure, had I known someone like you, I probably could have accordion this time.
Sure.
It took me probably about 10 months of doing this on my own. I had a ghostwriter help me and walk me through and all these things. And
Sure.
I think your service would have been invaluable
Yeah.
because how much time, it's kind of like coaching, you're avoiding the thousands of mistakes that people have made before you by hiring a coach, because they're basically showing you what not to do. Same as with you and buying your book,
Absolutely.
and learning from you. I would imagine it's very similar. You're just, hey, don't go left. There's a cliff, go right, because that's the path that all the successful people go.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm going to go right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What, if I was sitting down with you or I was reading your book and I had a chance to talk with you, what is something that I should ask you that most people don't? And you're like, man, if you would have asked me this, you probably would have gotten a better answer or a better result from writing your own book or whatever.
It's interesting because I always try to ask the questions that they aren't asking as we go through that, because I think it's important to really go into anything with your eyes wide open, right? To not be blindsided of anything. I think maybe one of the questions that I would be asking is whether it's working, whoever you're working with. I often say if you want to elevate, you must collaborate. And so trying to do it on your own is just going to be so frustrating. Anything that you're just trying to do on your own. And so finding who, not how, as a book by that name also, but figuring out who do I partner with. Alignment, I think, is the key. Are you in alignment with the people that you want to work with? And I've seen so many times where authors get into a process and somewhere along the way they realize we're not connecting, we're not understanding each other, we don't have clarity on where we're going, the people I'm working with, or it may be something to your story. Maybe you may have different beliefs about life and the universe and everything, and you realize I'm not really bought into this. I think it's super important to work with people who actually share your common passion for your message. They've got to have that passion for it. And they have to have alignment in terms of their values. They've got to have that kind of alignment. Otherwise, we have people come to us all the time who are like, "Hey, I got halfway through a book and it fell apart, and what do I do now? Can you help me fix it?"
Yeah.
They become book doctors in many ways, or messaging doctors, and I would rather spare people that pain on the front end. There have been many times that I've had conversations with people and they might have shared their message, and I said, it just doesn't resonate with me, or it's not a fit for us. Here's why. Don't let that stop you, right? But we want to find people who really excel at what you're trying to get out into the world.
So let me ask you, Bill.
Yeah.
At this stage in your life where you're at, like, what is the version of success that you're personally chasing today?
I think doing meaningful work and helping tell stories that make the world a better place. I mean, it might sound simplistic, but at the end of the day, I think that's what really matters, right? So wanting to do things that matter to the world, that make it better, that help people in that way. And of course, my personal faith as a Christian, I want to do things that help show love to others and show that compassion of Jesus to others, and in that way, so that I can just help move them and help solve so many of the problems that are in the world. So coming up, helping people create books that solve problems, that make problems go away, that minimize, that give people an advantage, that help just make everything better. I feel like that's really the stuff that really moves me, and what I'm seeking to partner with.
So if you were speaking to the person that's watching this right now, and maybe they're stuck in survival mode and they're wondering if this is right for them or what they should do, what is the truth that you feel they need to hear?
Every story matters, especially yours. That's what I think everybody needs to hear, is that I truly believe that every story matters. And that doesn't mean everybody's going to write a book, right? But that means that really seeing the world in that way, that every story matters. There are no invaluable stories. It's all like you started our show with talking about people you see on the streets and thinking they all have a story. I don't know what it is, but I'm surrounded by stories all the time. Everything has a story to it. Every object, every um, I just, I have a phone here. I've had it for a couple years now. I'm just thinking of all the places it's gone and all the places it's been. All the travels, and so there's stories to everything and everyone. And so we are each a steward of our own stories. And what are we doing with that? I was just talking to one of our story partners of a few minutes ago, actually, and he was talking about he's in the financial advisory space, and he believes in doing things differently. He's really focused on helping people, very much like we are. And he was advising someone on their finances, and he wasn't trying to sell them something. He was saying, look, you've reached a place in life. It was an older gentleman where you have the money. It's time to enjoy things with your family. You need to travel with your wife. You need to experience these things and not be so focused on making the next dollar, right? This is not typical financial advisor advice, but he's like, enjoy life, go do things that bring you joy and bring others joy. And I think, that it's that approach of actually coming alongside and helping people do things differently and share messages with in the world like that can truly matter.
I love it. I think that's great, Bill. I think storytelling is the most. It goes back, hundreds and hundreds of years, and that's how we pass down, information. I mean, if there weren't storytellers, where would we be today?
Thousands of years. I mean,
thousands. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Most of what we know of history is intentionally passed down, and really, it's only been in recent human history that we've gotten away from that kind of oral traditions, intentionally passing on stories to communicate values and what's happened and all these kind of things. It's only in the last, modern history that we've sort of veered away from that and not seen ourselves as stewards of story and needing to share it with the next generation or with other people in that sense. So the more we can get back to that, I think the more the world gets better.
Yeah. Love that, man. I love that. Well, Bill, if people want to reach out to you, they want to kind of figure out what is the next step in their life, and if they want to become a storyteller, how do they find you?
Yeah, well, the easiest way to connect with us is that you can just schedule a call with us and have a conversation. mystorybuilders.com/story, mystorybuilders.com/story, and just let's talk. I mean, let's hear your story. That's one of the big ones. mystorybuilders.com. Go to visit us on the web and find out more about who we are and what we're about. And then, grab a copy of my book. I mean, we put the work in to give a clear path for people to kind of understand it, know it, and you can get that wherever good books are sold. You can go to yourstoryadvantage.com. There's some cool bonuses that are available there also, but wherever good books are sold, just grab a copy and that'll get you started.
Great. I love it. Bill, thank you so much for your time. I think, again, I think writing a book is a must for anyone. I think everyone has a story. And sometimes, it's good to have documentation of what your story is, whether you're in business or you just want your family or friends or someone to know your story. Because I think everyone has one. And, I think the most selfish thing someone can do is not tell their story. I firmly believe that. And I think what you're doing is great, because it's actually selfless by doing this and letting people, tell their story and realize that they are important. They do have a meaning here, and people want to hear it. So I want to thank you for being on today, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate just hearing about the story you're living and the experiences that you've had and that you bring to the table, and then making yourself available to help put a spotlight on other people's stories. I mean, you're kind of modeling exactly the value of that. So thank you, Steve.
All right. Well, folks, on behalf of Bill and myself, I want to thank everyone for being on High Stakes with Steve Rozenberg. We will be back next week with another episode. Until then, please make sure you like, comment, share, do all the standard things to help other people hear this story and they can create their story getting in touch with Bill. So we will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.